For the funniest night of your life, meet Todd Oliver and Friends.
How come when I throw the stick, you don't get it? I don't want it.
A first-class act of family fun featuring Irving, the world's famous talking dog.
Without me, you wouldn't talk. Without me, you wouldn't eat.
A complete cast of wacky characters that will put you in the aisles with loads of laughter.
Would you mind giving an old man a kiss?
Sure.
Good. Hey, mister, get up there.
Todd Oliver has been featured on numerous national television shows, including The Tonight Show, Late Night with Letterman, and America's Got Talent.
Sandy from Cleveland, she asks, our dog Chester pees in the house. Any advice? Clean it up.
Todd is well known for his 20 years of hilarious performances on showboats in Nashville and Branson, nominated 3 years in a row at the Branson All-American Entertainment Awards. Now, Todd is booking tours in communities across the USA with a delightful 90-minute showcase of ventriloquism, comedy, music, magic, and lots of audience participation. Todd Oliver and Friends, guaranteed to be the funniest night of your life.
Hello and welcome back to Landon Live. My name's Landon Harvey, and tonight we have Todd Oliver. Todd, how are you doing tonight?
Well, better now that I'm on your show.
Yeah, and you just had a show. How did it go?
Great.
Fantastic.
Fabulous. It was a high energy, and the crowd was really sharp. They caught all the little stuff, it was just one. It was like as good as it gets, just great. Yeah.
That's awesome. Where are you performing right now?
It's called the Playhouse Dinner Theater at Shepherd of the Hills in Branson, Missouri.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's get into the interview. How did you begin your career as a ventriloquist? Where did it start for you?
Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy.
Okay.
I saw them on television in the 60s, and Charlie was it. He had the class and charm, and just witty, but the personality just knocked me out. And I was, I was probably 7 or 8, and I wanted one of those. I wanted, for 1968, I was 10 years old. I got a Charlie McCarthy doll for Christmas, and a string behind the neck, but he still looked so cool, And
right.
My dad died 3 days later, and which really, messed me up. And the vent, really, that little Charlie doll really served many purposes. And went to the library, 793.6, to remember the section. They had all these great books on vent and magic. And, I just got the record by Edgar Bergen and Jimmy Nelson, too. And then, I used to watch, back when I was a kid, or, the Hollywood Palace and Ed Sullivan, they both those shows loved vents. So I saw everybody from, Jimmy Nelson to Vicki Taylor, who became a friend of mine, and all kinds of people. Jane Nemeth and Nicky, his little dog, all kinds of really great. There were a lot of vents on television. If you were a professional nightclub event, you had a pretty good shot at doing a lot of those shows because they liked vents, Yeah. That's not what, that was it. Started out as a volunteer. Just, I was at 13. I didn't really have much of an act. And I just started calling around and booking my show anywhere I could book it. And now and then I might get $10 from a library to do a show,
So how old were you when you started booking shows?
13.
Okay, yeah.
13, yeah.
Wow.
My mother never drove a car. Back in those days, some women didn't drive, And so I used to take the city bus with the figure in the suitcase around town and go do my act. Everybody thought I was running away from home.
Wow, that's awesome. Wow. So did you have, aside from inspiration in the event, did you have other people that inspired you comedically or when you were writing for your characters?
Oh, sure. I loved Myron Cohen.
Okay.
And I loved Alan King and Red Skelton. Phyllis Diller. Oh, I loved Phyllis Diller.
Yeah.
Oh man, she, she had that edge, without being nasty or gross or off color. I mean, she just had that edge. And
Sure.
and Tody Fields, and I loved Alan King and Willie Tyler. Huge influence, big influence. Willie Tyler, yeah. And there were others, and yeah. Maury Amsterdam from the Dick Van Dyke Show had a great nightclub act, and he used to tour supper clubs, and yeah. And then other people, Woody Woodbury Records. He was a piano lounge, piano bar comedian.
Okay.
And
yeah.
He told stories and told jokes. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So how is your act, from when you were 13, marketing yourself, trying to get any show you could get around town? How did that grow to where you are today? And how did it change venue wise and the way you approach comedy? I know this is a loaded question with a bunch of different questions within it, but it's an interesting thing to see how you evolve as a performer.
Well, yeah, and we all do. And that's one thing a lot of young entertainers, I think, forget. You're going to evolve.
Yeah.
You're going to evolve, and great things are going to come along to, to inspire you. You're going to finally figure out something that is just magical, and it's just going to evolve. It just does. Vent does that. But what happened with me was, first of all, getting a good figure in 1971, they were expensive. And I remember the Fred Meyer catalog #2. They were, Clinton and Adelia had bought the company by then.
Okay.
We became great friends. They came to my wedding, actually. I love those folks. I miss them. But back then, a good figure cost $250. My mother had given me money to buy a really good Gretsch guitar and a combo organ and an amp, which was like, $800. So I just didn't even think about asking her $250 for a vent figure. So what happened was I called every antique store and toy store in Minneapolis, St. Paul, every one in the yellow pages. One of them had a Pelham vent figure. You know what those are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Rhonda started with one.
Through, and the figure can have a hand, right?
Yep.
But the hand's on the stick. And that's what I
right.
needed. And that was, so I got that. $15 at Clancy's Toy Store. And it was good enough to be able to do shows. And, so I just, joke books, I found jokes. I did the old joke. I remember the first joke what I did is I did a combination of magic and vent because I didn't have enough material as a vent. Right? So like the figure and I would do, we would do the dove pan. And the trick, and the dummy, his hand, was working. Well, he'd pour the flour in the dove pan and then throw the flour in my face, right? We crack an egg, put it in there, and then throw the egg at my face, Right. Situation comedy. Then I light the thing on fire, boom, then a bird came out, and the figure would say, great, now we can eat them, stuff like that, So it was a combination. And then I play the piano, right? So I play the piano, and what I would do early on, and I still do it. Right now I have a piano bench that a vent figure fits inside. And I go to the piano and I play some real fast jazz stuff. About a little over a minute, just wailing. Right? And then you hear, you hear the distant voice, open up the bench, I pull the dummy out of the bench. First thing he says is, what you doing? I'm playing the piano. Sound like my sister. Is she the piano player? Is she the piano? Oh, she's the piano. I did that years ago, but I had the figure, the Pelham figure, under a cloth on the upstage side of the piano. So I always would have the dummy interrupt me playing the piano, and then he'd give me a hard time. I mean, a silly joke like, "Did you know it takes 75 elephants to make the keys for that piano?" No, but man, how they get them big brutes to do such delicate work, I'll never know. That's a Maury Amsterdam joke. I used that joke when I was a kid, and it got that. So I did that combination of, but I didn't really understand dramatic structure.
But I'm sure that, you know, even copying those jokes and performing them so many times kind of allowed that structure to seep in, you know, for future writing.
Yes. And boy, that's when I'll tell you how it kicked in.
Yeah.
Through junior high, I was doing my act, you know, and, you know, I just like senior citizen luncheon banquets, you know, just weird things, you know, stuff that, you know, anyways, but I started working on a school assembly act. And I got that, and I read a lot of books from magicians who played school shows. And then I started figuring that whole thing out, you know. Okay, all right. Audience control, appropriate material for the right age and all that.
Yeah.
You start, you know, you kind of figure it out. And then time, you know, audience control is the first thing, you know, well, what happened was this woman saw me. I was at the Minnesota State Fair when I was in 9th grade, and I won 2nd place at the fair, the contest thing, right? Yeah. And she saw me, and she worked for the Minneapolis Public Schools. She convinced my high school, my principal, my counselor, that I should be on the work program as an entertainer. See, back in those days, if you knew, if you didn't want to go to college, but you had like you were a auto mechanic, or you were a hairstylist, or a carpenter, a plumber's apprentice, if you had a career-minded thing, you could get on the work program and only have to go to school 3 hours a day, from 7:30 to 10:30. Then you go to your job, right?
Right.
Your job. Well, she scored this thing for me because not only was I doing my act, I was also in a rock band with a bunch of hippies playing rock and roll music.
Really? Wow. Okay.
These guys were like 21 and 22, and I was 15. But I could sing. I could sing really high, and I was a good keyboard player and a guitar player. And rock. This was 1974, and rock and roll was still novel then. It was still special. I mean, a live rock band rocking was still a really special event. You know? Yeah. Okay. So what happened was, this was my life, right? I'd have to be at school at 7:30. I'd get out at 10:30, and I would go play school shows almost every day as a volunteer. Now, this was right after the Vietnam War, so everybody was having kids. And schools, every school I would go to in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, you had to do 3 assemblies at every school. You had to, because there were so many kids there. There were like 600 kids in the school, right?
Yeah.
And that's just the way it was. So what happened is this little old man would pick me up at 10:30, the driver guy. I kept the figure in a suitcase in my locker, but I kept the rest of the act in his car. And so he picked me up, and then we'd go to a school, and I'd do 3 shows. And then after that, he would drop me off at the band house where all these hippie guys lived, and I'd practice with the band, and the guys in the band give me a ride home at night. That was my life. And then there were some weeks where the band was on the road, you know, so I didn't have to do school shows, but we were on the road playing clubs. So my mother told the leader of the band, Todd can be in your band, but if he gets in trouble, you're going to be in trouble. Don't let him get into trouble, because we were playing nightclubs. I was 15. Right. I was underage, but I never got in trouble, you know.
Did you ever feel like you had to choose between, you know, one over the other, you know, in a band or, okay. What was that point like, you know, when you had to decide?
Well, at the time, I loved both. I loved both of it. I loved both. I really did. But rock and roll was a great way to meet girls. Right?
Right.
The dummy creeped them out. At the time. The time. Well, probably because I wasn't a very good vent. Maybe that's why the dummy creeped them out. I mean, I could talk about moving in my mouth, and I had that pitch to it. Oh yeah, you know that I did all that, you know.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a different world then too, you know.
I don't think it works today either, though. Like,
yeah.
Well,
but I loved both. I loved both of it. But what happened was at the end of my senior year, the band I was in got an offer to tour with Tommy James and the Shondells as a guest opening act.
Uh-huh.
So what happened was I just quit doing my act, and I went full time into rock and roll, and I did that for 5 years. And then what happened was, when I was 24, the music changed. It got real electronic and real. It wasn't rock and roll anymore. It was kind of an electronic dance type disco thing, and that was it. I didn't like it, and the record and the band I was in, hard to keep a band together.
Yeah,
and we were broke. We had nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and I was living in a rooming house, broke. That dummy started looking pretty good.
And did you still toy with it, every now and then, or was it just off in its case in the corner? I mean,
I hadn't seen him. I didn't see him for 5 years.
Wow.
Oh, rock and roll, the world.
Yeah.
The world for we were recording. We had I wrote a song called "Merry Goes Round" that made a little noise, and it was. That's just the way it was. But what happened was, band broke up. I was broke. I went for a walk one night. I stopped at the library, and I went in, and I went right to 793.6. I know God just led me right there, and there they were. There were, Fun with Ventriloquism, Alexander Van Resler, Fun and Profit, Paul Winchell, all the old books, and I just checked them all out. I went home. The little Andrew, the Pelham figure, was over at my mother's, so I went and got it, and I just started working at it, and I got a gig playing piano in the lobby of a real swanky hotel. Right.
Okay.
7 days a week in a tuxedo playing piano. Real drag. Drag. But I started practicing the vent. Called Clinton, called Adelia. They sent me a bunch of school talk for dummies and stuff. I told him, and he, and then this was before the internet. And I wrote to a bunch of figure makers. And I met Foy Brown in Lawrence, Kansas, and his brother Doc Brown. Foy Brown made figures. He's long gone, His brother Doc Brown was living in Sioux Falls. I met him.
Okay.
And, I just started reading all the books, practicing. And then I wrote all those figure makers. And John Arvidas, Conrad Hartz, the guy from Florida, the real heavy figures. Oh, what was his name? I forget. Well, anyway. Finest Robinson.
Yes.
Robinson. And he was very charming on the phone. And I almost pulled the trigger on one of those figures. But then my good, dear friend, Mark Wade, said, Todd, I hadn't known Mark very long. I just called Mark up one day, and we became instantly, School Assembly Act.
Yeah.
So we had a lot to talk about. Well, Mark said, Todd, I think you should call Conrad Hartz. I think you'd like Conrad Hartz figures. I called Conrad. Conrad sent me a Polaroid of figures he was finishing. There was one right there, and I went, that's the one. Because in my mind, I had created Joey Clark, my new character. In my mind, I did the thing where I wrote like a 4-page biography on his character, right? And I knew in my mind, blonde hair.
I have to pause you here, Todd, because this is important. Is this how you create all your characters? Where you create them and then you have them made, or you find the puppet to fit them?
Well, the first one was what I just told you. In my mind, Joey, my first professional figure, 1982. In my mind, it was a blonde-haired, big blue-eyed kid. Yeah. I'm brunette, brown eyes. I wanted something different, right? And a lot of guys had used red-haired figures, so nobody really had any blonde-haired, So I thought Joey, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Joey Clark. That was the name I came up with. And so that's what I did. With Pops, which was made by Conrad. Conrad had made Pops, and he called me. He said, I've got a figure you might like. And he sent me the picture, and I went, oh, my God, that's it. I love him. And we used to, in the band days, when we'd arrive at a gig, there would always be like an old custodian that would give the band a hard time. We used to always call him Pops. Hey, Pops. Hey, Pop. Look out. Hey, Pops is pissed off at the band, whatever,
Right.
That was like a nickname we had. Well, Conrad showed me that picture, that figure, and that was it. And then the voice, came right away, which is similar to the dog's voice, similar, but not exactly. And then Lilly. I went to see Jim Barber, and I drove down to Jim, because Jim lived in St. Paul. I lived in Minneapolis. Jim was going to, finishing up school, and he had a children's television program that he graciously invited me to be on. And so Jim and I drove down to Lawrence, because Diane at the time was going to school down there, and I met Foy Brown, and I stayed at Foy's house. And I woke up one morning and the living room was full of Vent figures, like on every couch and sofa. And Foy was like, he had to be at least 78 years old, and his wife, Grace, they became like surrogate grandparents almost. I used to stay with them a lot when I was on the road. Boy, she made great fried chicken. And the living room was always full of figures. Well, I bought a country boy from him named Norman, who was very funny-looking little character with an overbite. I got him after Joey, and I used him for a while, but I don't know. When Pops came, Pops just had more of a powerful punch, I mean, that old man, ready to go, I'm ready to go, ready to go, I'm ready to go. I mean, he was a mean, crazy maniac. They still is. I still use him in the show. He is he looks like he was dragged behind a truck and enjoyed it, and so I that's how I got those figures, and
But you had these characters in mind, while the character was marinating before you got the puppet, or it just kind of clicked when you got it, or how does that?
It clicked when I saw it. It clicked when I saw it.
Yeah.
When I saw Pops, I just knew. Oh, that's that old custodian that used to give us a hard time all the time,
Yeah.
With an old mean, decrepit kind of creep, No, we used to, and when I was a kid going downtown Minneapolis, you'd see, bums walking around and all, trying to hustle you for a dollar or 50 cents, So I used to see guys like that all the time, in the city. And with Lilly, I just saw that head, that face. Oh my God. I mean, she's cross-eyed, got buck teeth.
Yeah.
She reminded me of some of the women my mother used to work with at the phone company. She looked like a telephone operator that, and but she's she's got this face. I mean, she's just bizarre looking, I do a joke, and she's trying to hustle Pops. Come on, honey. Come on. And then Pops, Pops is not into it, Come on, honey. Look at my eyes, dear. Look at my eyes. Now say something romantic. And he says, I think there's something in your right eye. How come? Your left one keeps looking at it. Killer.
Yeah.
Every show I do that joke. So
you have two characters at once, or is this one from the case?
I have two at once. Yeah, I start out with Pops. I designed a vent table, so inside the table, suitcases on top with a figure. In the table, I have a shelf that goes halfway across, so a figure can lay on that shelf with the legs dangling down. So you can grab the stick and in one move go, shoot, and that figure's on your.
That's great.
Yeah, I figured that out a long time ago, because I wanted to be able to get the figure out without taking. I said I work on a stool. I've always said.
Yeah, you don't want it to be clunky when you're.
I want to be clunky, and all those years in production shows, there's no time to goof around. You come out there, you got to hit it, bam, 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 bam. There's no, So when that figure, that's how I did it. I just grabbed that figure, and I don't want that. I don't like that figure dangling around like it's a dead person. I don't like that.
Yeah.
The figure must be manipulated, and the whole manipulation thing, very important. Respect the character, and the audience. So I grabbed that stick and I swing her out so fast, it almost looked like she's just kind of jumping out of the table and jumping on my neck.
Wow, that is great. That's super neat. I've always admired. I love. I mean, a good vent with a puppet is one thing, but then adding a second puppet when you got two of them, and wow, it's that's a challenge in itself, and fun when you finally all clicks. That's really great.
And you've got to go through the process, you know.
Right. Yeah.
You can't be impatient, you know, about these things. Sometimes it'll come along. George Schindler, Magic with Your Voice. George was a very big help. I was working in 1984 at the Peacock Room in Cambria, California, in a dinner show, review show, production show.
Yeah.
And I didn't have I had a little bit of material, not a whole lot, you know. But George told me, he said, Todd, the best material for an event is what you'll create on stage in an ad lib, and you'll keep it in your act. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, you know.
Sure.
When people see me that know me, they always go, went outside, came back in, went outside, came back in. That's the thing the dog does, right? Well, that happened on stage like the 5th time he was on stage at the Showboat in Nashville. You know? So I've got a lot of stuff in my act, a lot of lines that came from, you know, I was very, very blessed. And there's another thing too. When I got back in the event, you know, when I was like 23, I took lessons from a brilliant ventriloquist named Mark Johnson from Minneapolis. This guy, man, I saw him work, and that figure said, one of the lines was, I guess you could say he came back in a snap. Ventriloquially, unbelievably good, man. Really.
Wow.
Really good. And the figure's name was Rusty Hinges. And Rusty would laugh. When Rusty laughs, his eyebrows go up at the same time. When he kind of looks down on his... Mark married the voice and the face and the mannerisms together, where that figure, personality and character is powerful, man. Really powerful. And when you do that, when you can get that face, that voice, and the mannerisms, and then, of course, the material, but still, you know, the figure... Fred Meyer said something in his catalogs. I'll never forget it. He said the figure has to have a pixie-like charm. Right on, man. Right on. That is it. Yeah. And they have to be endearing. They have to be endearing. Sometimes I think a figure is too big. They're ghoulish. That little pixie-like charm. Now, you know, they can be a little devil too, you know. But they can... Right. But they should retain that charm. That innocence. You know,
just because a character's mean doesn't mean it doesn't have a nice side to it.
Right.
You know
right. Yeah. Joey, every now and then, he'll when he's mouthing, you know, a lot of what Joey does, he works the crowd right off the bat. You know, the way I, with the figure, my old act, what I did, I had an opening line, and then this is the act I did for many years. Opening line, 3 impressions, work the audience. That's how my act started.
Okay.
The opening line was a joke I wrote in Nassau, Bahamas, with Michael Madden, a magician, and a donut shop. And this is the first joke I ever wrote. Okay.
Ventriloquist and a magician in a donut shop. I love that.
This is the first joke I ever wrote.
Okay.
So, like I say, Willie Tyler, God love him. Cool. Yeah. I always said Edgar Bergen made ventriloquism classy and Willie made it cool. It's the truth, man.
That is very truthful. I love that.
Anyways, so a lot of Willie Tyler influence. I'm a singer. So I used to open my act with a song. Short version. Short. That's the thing. All you vents out there, you open with a song, short. 1 minute. 1 minute, 10 seconds most. They want to see that dummy be funny. They don't, you know, okay, you're a singing event. I know Terry and the little girl, Darcy, a lot of great singing events. Hey, great. Yeah. Willie Tyler, great singer. Lester, great singer. I get that. But for an act, for a comedy act, I learned from the days of production shows and occasional cruise ship, fair date, whatever. The song will get you on a stage with the figure. The song gets you out there. The audience can eyeball your lips for about a minute to make sure you're doing okay, right?
Right.
So I used to do a 1-10-second version of the song "Stand By Me" with an up tempo. When the night, and then at the end near the end, the dummy Joey would just go, yeah. We'll hold out, bam, the song ends, right?
Uh-huh.
The song ends. As soon as the song ends, Joey would be through the song. He'd be eyeballing some broad in the front row, and right off the bat, Joey. This was the first joke I ever wrote. Joey would say, "Oh, there she is. She's looking at me. She's looking at me. She's looking at me. Todd, look at her. She's looking at me, man. She's falling in love. I'm falling in love. She's looking at me. She's looking at me. She's looking at me." Yeah, she's with a guy. That's okay. He's looking at you. That gag killed every night.
Yeah.
That was a killer line. It never failed. And believe it or not, we got away with it in high schools.
Really?
Why? The dummy can get away with it.
Wow.
It doesn't come off like, a gay. It's so fast. Right. It doesn't come off like a gay thing. That's the implication from the figure. Right. But he's just a little dummy. He doesn't know what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
He's a loose cannon.
Right.
And then Joe and I said, "No, why you say that?" And he'd say, "Because your lips are moving." Bam! Second punch, right? Second punch right off the bat.
Right.
You want me to? All right, listen. Hey, can I do my new act? I do impressions. I can do riding on the tilt-a-whirl at Disneyland. Introduce me. Boom. Ladies and gentlemen, Joy Clark's impression of riding on the tilt-a-whirl at Disneyland. Spins his head around then he bends over like he's thrown up. Okay? Second, killer. I still do it.
Yeah.
It never fails. I've done that thing. I wrote that thing 40 years ago, maybe, right?
But what's so interesting, and I want you to talk a little bit about this, because working with a puppet for a long time is one thing, but then having a material that's lasted so long that still kills today. It's kind of almost like looking at that same puppet that you've worked with, but picking up that material and going, okay, we're gonna do this today, and you're like, yeah, I know it's tried and true, and it's that must be just so neat to.
Well, it gets down to this, good jokes don't make it. Only great jokes make it. You don't want a good laugh. You want a great laugh.
Right.
And in review shows, that's where I learned. 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week for 21 years. That's where I learned. Because you follow singer dancers that have been singing and dancing the audience has been sitting for 25 minutes looking at dancers or singers, and maybe an adagio act or maybe another specialty act up front. So when you come out, they're ready to laugh.
Yeah.
But if you don't go out there and go, "Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?" Huh? You don't work like a comedy club. No, you don't wait. You don't kind of get into your thing. No.
Right.
You get to the laugh. You want that laugh right off the bat. The energy. You gotta know what you're doing. You gotta nail it. That's where that opening line, that opening thing.
Yeah.
High energy. And think about this now. Analyze this, right?
Mm.
First thing that figure does, works the crowd.
Yeah.
First thing he does. It's not, "Hey, did you hear the one about?" No. First thing that figure is nailing the crowd right off the bat. Okay, but I think I interrupted your thing here. Well, what did you? Sorry.
I have another question. So, Irving, when did that enter the mix?
Sure. So here's what happened. I was on that showboat in Nashville for 7 years.
Sure.
The second year I was there, I signed a recording contract for children's music with a songwriter, publisher company, record company. And we still have the deal. We recorded 4 albums for children called the Positively Positive Day Play. Now I'll get to it here. When I was on that showboat in Nashville, it was 7 nights a week from March until New Year's Eve. From March 1st to New Year's Eve was 7 nights a week, right? Dinner show, orchestra in the orchestra pit. It was grand show business, man. This was every variety act's dream. I mean, it's a beautiful, grandiose showroom, orchestra pit in front of the stage. I went on a sweet spot after all that sing and dance and stuff. It was a killer. 10-piece orchestra, timpani drum. Now, this was show business, man. Real show business. And really great musicians and great singers. It was a great. Well, anyways, through a friend, this songwriter, record producer saw me, Dennis Morgan. He had written hits like Smoky Mountain Rain, all that. I Knew You Were Waiting for Me, Aretha Franklin, George Michael. He'd written a lot of hits for a lot of people. Well, he saw me do my school show. Because when I was doing that showboat 7 nights a week, I was doing I was hustling school shows during the day. Working 7 nights a week, you think that'd be enough? And then maybe go to the pool during the day.
Not to mention the difference in material and in crowds and
this is my day. Pardon me?
Did you have the same characters for both shows, or did you have some?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. Didn't have the dog. But this is my life in Nashville, all right?
Right.
I'd get up at about 5 a.m, 3 days a week, get my shower, fill my thermos, be driving to a school somewhere. I developed 100 school accounts on my own just by calling schools. At the time, can't do this anymore. They hang up on you. At the time, well, maybe they don't hang up on you, but at the time, you could call and book a school show. Hi, this is Todd Oliver from Opryland. Boom, that got their attention. Opryland was a big, respectful entertainment organization. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, we have a school assembly program we'd like to bring to your school. And they'd buy them. They'd book it, So I would go out and I'd do my school shows during the day, I think I made $300 a show.
Yeah.
Right? Try to book 2 of them in the same area, get one country principal to call his buddy at another school, and so I go out and make $600 during the day. Then I get home about 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, get my second shower, get in the van, drive to the showboat, do the review show on the showboat. Now, when I wasn't that, but then this guy saw me do my school show, and him and Dennis Morgan, brilliant Grammy Award-winning songwriter, publisher, producer.
Yeah.
Him and his wife, they didn't have children, but he started a record company with children's music, and him and all these cool people wrote songs for me and the Figures. And we recorded all these songs, and a lot of interesting people, a lot of cool people. We did Shel Silverstein.
Really?
Yeah, Dick Wagner from Alice Cooper. Roy Orbison. All these cool people who were into. There's a ventriloquist making a children's album. But in Nashville, that was like doing acid on Mars.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, I made these albums, and then I'd go out and I'd hustle them during the day at the schools and sell them. Try to push them on children's radio, which was a real drag. Because when the artist is hustling his own thing, sometimes they don't respect you a whole lot, Record label was a small record label. They couldn't do that much. And but I loved the music, and all the songs had a really good message without it being like preachy. I always had a message in my act, but it wasn't like a church preachy thing. It was like use your time wisely. Use your time wisely. We wouldn't say this, but use your time wisely. Turn a talent into a skill that'll take care of you when you grow up. That was the main thing. Okay, so you're barely passing biology. You don't get geometry. Well, you have a talent. There's something really good you can do, boys and girls. You got to find out what that is and turn that into a skill that'll take care of you when you grow up.
Right.
Okay, so you're not going to cure cancer. Okay. You're going to do something else that's just really cool too, though, That was my whole deal with school shows. And remember, by this time, I had done thousands of school shows. Because before the production shows in Nashville, I did those school assembly tours where I did 500 schools a year, 4 schools a day, 5 days a week, 9 months a year, for years.
Wow.
Yeah. And then fairs in the summer, which were usually a drag, hot. The merry-go-rounds making so much noise they can't hear you do your act. It could be a real
Right.
Anyways, so I'm in Nashville. I've done okay. Oh, so how did the dog come along? Here's what happened. I'd done all the TV shows on TNN. Back then, it was the Nashville Network. Jim did it. Barbara, Jeff Dunham did a bunch of those too. I think Willie did them. Bill Boley did a couple of them. Bill lived up the road, just about an hour and a half away, and Bill and Charlene, we used to spend great times together. Oh man, we would laugh. Bill would have these get-togethers in July, and we would just laugh. Bill and I would trade war stories, road stories. We would just we would just laugh until we couldn't breathe, talking about experiences of, like, I've got some if you want to hear some. Then we
have a question about that later.
Yeah, but anyway, okay, so here's what happened. I done all the TV shows at TNN. Right? Okay. Well, I done them all twice. Nashville Now, Crook and Chase, Music City Tonight, CMT Top 12 Countdown. That was bizarre.
Wow. Yeah, I bet.
Whatever. Who knows? But they had me and Joey introducing a video or something. I don't. Okay, so I went to try to book myself back in, and I didn't have an agent at the time. I didn't have an agent because I didn't need one. I had the house gig on the Showboat, and I was booking my own school shows. Right. I didn't need an agent, and I had an agent, but he wasn't doing much, and I kind of gave him the boot,
Right.
Yeah. So I went over to TNN to book myself back on a show, and Bill Turner, who was in charge of entertainment, the nicest human being in television ever. He always had his door open. Hey, Todd, come on in. He'd reach in his fridge, give me a Coke. What are you doing over there? How's that Showboat doing? Fine. What can I help? What can I do you for, Todd? Well, Bill, I'd like to get back. Can I get another date? Another TV date? Well, Todd, we've already had you twice. I said, well, I've got new material. See, I remember by this time I only had Joey and Pops. So they had seen the two. Lilly hadn't been developed yet.
Okay.
So, well, Todd, we've already seen those puppets. What else you got? Well, I got new material. Yeah, well, Todd, everybody's got new material. What else you got besides the dummies? And I said, well, I've got this idea. And I said, well, I'm thinking about making my dog talk. And Bill said, well, now there you go, boy. A little dog puppet. I said, no, a real dog. He went, that's great, Todd. You got to do it. And then I said, well, some people told me the animal rights people. And he said, don't worry about that. In show business, you're going to always have people trying to freak you out to not do something. Right. Just do it, man. Do it. And then my friend, great magician, Maverick from Phoenix, and Jonathan Neal Brown, another magician from Los Angeles, and they're both great magicians. They helped me. They put me in touch with a magic guy, a magic builder. And then that guy put me in touch with a guy in Van Nuys, California. And then what happened was I got a puppy. And then I was so busy, I hired a dog trainer to hold the puppy for a month and get him started. The dog trainer took the puppy and wouldn't give him back because his wife fell in love with the puppy. And he wouldn't give the puppy back, and he wouldn't give me my money back. He ripped me off. Right?
Wow.
Yeah, he was a real creep. Really a loser. So I had to get another puppy. This time, puppy's staying with me.
Right.
And I raised him. That was the original Irving, Boston Terrier. And I went to California, and I flew out there. Oh, and my veterinarian, wrote a thing saying this isn't going to hurt the dog at all. So I always carried that with me.
Oh, that's cool.
He wrote that out like, this is fine. Blah, 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 blah.
How did you decide that you wanted because it's kind of like choosing like the way a puppet should look. Like, how did you decide what breed of, that
good
you
question. Very good question. You're absolutely right. I'm glad you brought that up. I knew I didn't want no cute little dog. I didn't want no cutie little Cocker Spaniel. I didn't want nothing cute.
Right.
something that looked like, originally with a basset hound I thought about getting, which I ended up getting as an extra one down the road. But originally I looked at a basset hound. They were too big. Couldn't travel.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, and there again, when a puppet is so big, for me, it doesn't work. It's too big for my deal. Okay.
Sure.
So then I looked at a bulldog, and they've got other issues. I looked at a pug, and they were too small. My brother said, Todd, check out a Boston Terrier. I did, and bam, that was it. That mouth is on upside down. Boston Terrier, bulging eyes, mouth on upside down. Looks like he chased a bus and caught it. And perfect size, 12, 15 pounds, right? Yeah. So that was my brother, Scotty, was the one that told me to do that. And he worked out great, yeah. And I went to Van Nuys. We got the gizmo. What happened was, at the time, we gave the dog, the designer came to Nashville. Went to the vet office. We gave Irving a little knockout gas. We made a mold of his face on both sides, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
This is like
right.
production level, like makeup.
Oh, wow. And it wasn't cheap. And cats in California, they don't work cheap. They don't they don't goof around. You better keep an eye on things, You better know what you're doing. And I think we did, So we made that mold, and then he went back to Van Nuys and made the prop.
Right.
The original one worked on a servo motor. You had to charge a servo motor. The only problem is those motors at the time were like light bulbs. They go out, and you don't know when they're going to go out. Right. And let me tell you something. When you take a talking dog on stage and the mouth don't work, you better be ready to work, baby. You better know. Yeah. You better. And it happened. We got to Vegas to do a TV date. Penn and Teller, a Sin City Spectacular, Sin City Sensation, whatever. It was 1997. The morning of the gig, the wiring went bad on the unit. And Andy from Van Nuys had to fly up to Vegas and with his toolbox, took the red eye from LA, showed up. He hadn't slept all night. Well, he took the whole thing and fixed it. And we made it the day of the TV show, man.
So I'm so curious though, like, what do you do now if you have to? Do you actually have like a dog puppet in case something happens to the dog, or do you have a backup dog? Like, how does that work, and how do you fly?
I have a backup.
Okay.
Most of the years I've had a backup dog. For a little bit, every now and then I didn't have a backup Irving, but most of the time I have. That prop has evolved over the years. So if you look at our appearances on those cameos we did on Tonight Show or David Letterman Vent Week, that mask I don't use that anymore. That thing was more like this, where the new one is only under here. See?
Right.
But it took 3 engineers and a whole bunch of money. Because the servo motor, I don't use that anymore. It's a mechanical thing. But every part, the people who design, the guy that made the new current ones I'm using, does specialty work for NASA, up in space. These cats don't come cheap.
Yeah,
they don't. And I have 4 of them. And they have to be repaired from time to time, because when that going on, right now I'm doing 5 shows a week.
Okay.
Most of my life I've done at least 5 shows a week. Sometimes it was 12 shows a week. Sometimes it was, 4 shows a day, 5 days a week, on the school show. Well, that was a long time. So you got to have, this has to work. And that's one thing I love about Conrad Hart's. Those figures work.
Yeah, very dependable.
They've never failed me. They've never failed me. And they work, and they're great, and I love them. I love Conrad. And a lot of good figure makers out there. I'm just telling you, Conrad and I loved his work ever since I was, in my early 20s. But so the dog gizmo just evolved, right?
So I'm curious, do you ever have, has anyone ever knocked off that idea, or how do you protect that idea? Because spending so much money and time and effort into something like this, is like.
Here's the deal. There was a guy in Vegas that had a talking dog.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He had a basset hound. And I worked with a juggling act that knew him. And they said, Doc, we worked with the guy that had the hush puppy, but he didn't really have much material. You should do a talking dog. This juggling act I worked with production shows years ago.
Uh-huh.
Well, this guy had a flapper on his dog. And the first time I did a national TV show from Vegas, he wrote me the nastiest email. And then when I did one of those TV shows, maybe America's Got Talent, he went on and called me a bloody copyist and all this. It was all garbage. It was all lies. I never saw his act. I didn't want to see his act. I create my own thing. But this creep, this Vegas creep, just bashed me up and down. Whenever I do a TV show, some kook, sometimes they actually there was a lady who thought I was squeezing the dog's privates to make him move his mouth.
Were you?
It was your sister. No. No. It was your girlfriend. No. No, But I mean, I get that.
That's why his eyes are bulged out.
Yeah, that's why his eyes bulged out. But but no, you can't really. You can't. Someone said, "Oh, Todd, you got to patent that thing." No, I'm
the best performer with it, and then you don't have to worry about. Yeah,
and that's the other thing. When I started doing the talking, when I first got it started, my friend Maverick, I procrastinated doing it originally. Because I was so busy. I was recording those kid albums, production shows, school shows, so busy. But Maverick finally said, Todd, you better do it, because if you don't, someone else is going to do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about that guy in Vegas. And there's been a few guys in Europe that have had a talking dog that do a nice act, I'm told. I haven't seen their work. There's a guy named Mark Motrell, and I saw a little bit of a clip on Britain's Got Talent. He was great. Little white dog, really cute. And he was great. Great ventriloquist. I've never seen his act, but but no, I tell you what, I've got so much for that thing to work. It's got to be smooth. It's got to look at it. It's taken a long journey to get it to where it is now. Yeah. I mean, the one on the Letterman, back in the Letterman days and the Tonight shows and all that, that gizmo was okay. But it wasn't as camera friendly as the one I have now, right? And it's taken a lot of work and a lot of money, and there's always someone who's going to try to steal your stuff. But my good friend Stanley Burns, Stanley one night in a restaurant in New York City said, Todd, they can steal your stuff, but they can't steal you.
I love that.
And that's where it's at. Now, listen, you lift the gag here, you lift the gag there, okay. Sure. Remember Bob Trank used to say, never forget who you steal from. But, I would borrow stock material. Hey, man, you're ugly. You apologize. I'm sorry. That's better. That you're so ugly. Every event's done that joke, right? I mean, you like girls I gather. No, I like girls I gather. I've seen the ones you gather. I mean, we all did them.
Right. Yeah.
We all did them. But I have enough of, most 98% of what I do now, it's all my stuff. Yeah. I tried using some writers. I had an agent in LA who sent me to a writer. And he wanted $1,000 a finished minute, right? Okay, it's LA, $1,000 a finished minute. I gave him $3,000 down payment. He sent me stock jokes out of a dog joke book, and he was like a big time writer. And I got my money back. I said, I remember these jokes when my daughter was reading a pet book on jokes, a pet joke book. I guess you, my daughter, read the same books, huh? Yeah, give me my money back, Pelly. And he did. You know, but you meet all kinds. But most of it, you know, I would take a joke and I'd switch it. You know, I take a joke and switch it. You know, everybody uses some stock material in times in their career, and everybody will maybe borrow something, change it, and switch it, and make it work for them. Okay, hey man, nobody's dying, nobody's going to jail.
Yeah, you know, I'm curious because you know you hear all these horror stories about traveling, you know, through the TSA with your puppets. Do you travel? I assume you travel and do gigs all around the world with Irving. Do you? And